Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry, and I'm so excited you're here to join me today. It happens to be snowing outside here. I don't know why. It's obviously it's Christmas time, so why wouldn't it be snowing? But I'm inside nice and toasty today with my good friend Ian, who's going to be joining me on the show. But before we get started, I do have to mention that we are hiring at Foundry, so check out foundrymakes.com/careers. We're always looking for talented people, so come and check it out. And then tell some friends to check it out. And then tell those friends to tell other friends. Make a party of it. You could get some friends over, have some wine, some cheese, and just talk about all the amazing opportunities happening at Foundry. So with that being said, I want to jump in and introduce Ian. Ian, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So Ian, tell me about the work you do. You have a long history in the agency world. Tell me about what you do these days.
So these days I'm an individual consultant. I do digital marketing, content, and SEO for clients with some analytics thrown in. And occasionally I'm brought in just to be the gray hair in the room. And kind of,
I have no idea what that's like.
Well, yeah, right. I'm occasionally called in just to sort of help people build teams and get teams working the way that they should, and do all those kinds of things. So
that's awesome.
I'm a nerd.
Well, yeah, as well you should be, especially in this day and age, with the type of work that we do. So. Let's talk about agency stuff. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you today was specifically because I get asked by lots of people, how do you start an agency? Why do you start an agency? All those different things. So let's jump into your background. Like, why did you do an agency in the first place? Was it just because you didn't want to work for the man? What was your goals?
I didn't do it on purpose. So I didn't really like the jobs I had to date. Yeah. And I sort of felt like I could probably go it on my own. So I started out just doing consulting on my own. And it just and then ended up hiring one person to help me with sort of grow the agency or grow me and add clients. And very quickly after that, within a year of starting out on my own, started to realize, you know what, I should build an agency. I should get other people involved and see what I can do to build something bigger.
Turn this into a real thing.
Yeah.
I find that's pretty common, don't you? That it is sort of, how do I scale myself? I'm getting a lot of opportunities. I'm seeing a lot of opportunity out there. Usually when people ask me, what's the first thing I should know when starting an agency? Usually my advice is don't. Don't do it. Where would you jump off, Ian?
I would say, do you have a good therapist? That would be a good place to start. Now, in all seriousness, the first thing you have to ask yourself, two things. Are you already carrying debt on the business side? And then on the personal side, are the people around you going to support you while you do this? Because I think
it is a lifestyle change.
It is. You can say you're not going to bring your work home with you or whatever, but if you're running an agency, you're very heavily involved with your clients. You're going through whatever they're going through almost every single day, as well as your team. It's very hard to come home and just let everything go, or just talk to friends and let everything go. So you need to be a little bit prepared, and you need to just get a sense of whether the people around you are okay with you doing this thing. And it's true, if you're starting any business, but In my experience, running an agency or any kind of professional services firm is one of the hardest kinds of businesses you can run, as far as the toll it can take on you day to day.
Sure.
There are far riskier businesses. There are far more difficult businesses to succeed in.
Right.
Because of your professional services, it's easier to scale up and down. But the day to day, never being able to walk away from it, constantly involved, always being the person that the biggest problems go to, and the biggest problems happen to be your revenue generators as well. That makes it really, really challenging.
Yeah, it's a lot more emotional labor than they tell you. You figure I'm really good at this deliverable, executable service, whatever the case may be, and all I need to do is just do more of that, and then it'll all be great. But that's not exactly how it goes. So I think that's really good advice, Ian, is to make sure not only you're prepared for it, but your support network, the space you take up in the world. If you have a family, friends, things are, people are not going to understand. Like, why can't you come out Friday night anymore? I'm making a spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, your internal support network, right? If you're already dealing with a whole bunch of difficulties in your life, or if you're, facing other significant challenges, you might want to wait a little while.
Sure.
I'm not going to say no. I mean, we're all always facing some things in our lives, but I would say, just think about where you're at, because this will be an all-consuming thing.
I think that's great advice, Ian. So let's talk about maybe to that person who's kind of the solopreneur, the consultant, the agency of one right now. And there, one other question I get a lot that I want your advice on, Ian, is when do I know when to hire and build on my team? Should I just stay a small one-man show, one-woman show? Should I expand? Like, what to you usually tells you you have now triggered the time to do that or not to do that?
If you feel like you're overloaded with work and the work is profitable, if you are, and that's just on the business side. So
yep.
If you have a whole bunch of little clients and you're working like crazy and you're overloaded, but your margin is 5%, bringing on another person is not going to help you, because you have to remember, any person you hire is going to cost you probably about 140% of what their salary will be, right? Because you have to pay their benefits. There's also these other things that you should do as a business owner. So if you bring someone in and you calculate their hourly rate or whatever, and you say, okay, I can keep my margin at 5%, it's not enough. You're going to end up in trouble. So on the business side, that's what you need to look for. On the personality side, you have to decide whether you are truly able to offload work to someone.
If you have the capabilities to delegate.
Are you able to delegate? And then back to the business side, are your processes sufficiently consistent that you can do that? The answer will be no, by the way. You will not have processes that are consistent enough. But if you can at least ask yourself that question, you're in a good place to think about it.
Well, that they say about the first step about understanding a problem is admitting you have a problem.
You have one. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Right. So knowing that but again, like, I don't usually discourage people just because you might not be ready in all the check boxes doesn't mean you shouldn't move forward, right?
That's right. I mean, all these things I'm talking about, I did all of them.
Yeah,
right? I was not good at delegating. I had lots of little clients that were overtaxed. The main thing is, when you go in, just understand, if you do that, it's going to make things a little more difficult for you. As a solopreneur, as a consultant, of course, you want to do everything yourself. That is why you started to do this. So of course that's going to be difficult. The biggest one is cash. You need to have at least enough cash on hand that when you hire that person, if they're doing their jobs effectively, you can keep the lights on long enough to get to the place where, because you have extra time, maybe you're bringing in extra business, or they are, or you're changing the way you work with clients, so your margins go up, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because again, it's not going to be a flip of the switch sort of hire, right? That there's going to be ramp up time. You're learning as they're learning. There's a lot of learning going on, and that's nobody's really paying you for that learning time. So
that's right. That's right.
I appreciate that. So let's say, I am doing that. I'm starting to add on those folks. what's sort of the, you know, in your mind, what's sort of the transition point from, what size is the agency or revenue, like however you want to put subject to it, but when I should be not doing work anymore, um, when I should be out of the day-to-day work, which is very difficult, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But so you haven't, you're doing an agency and you're doing paid advertising or something. Like, when should I stop opening up my Google, charts and looking through that
Yeah.
stuff? What sort of area, what should I be targeting?
So I'm the wrong person to ask, because the day I left Fortent, I was still occasionally handling consulting clients. Now, I was not interfering in projects,
Sure.
right? Or interfering. I was not
Yep.
assisting in projects.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
I'm sure it felt like interference to my team. Uh, what I would say is, as soon as possible,
Yeah.
what you want to do is try and convert yourself from, this is my own bias, but convert
Yep.
yourself from being a day to day on the clients to being a teacher of your team.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you can do that, you should do it. I will tell you that the wheels start to come off an agency at about 5, 10, 20, and 40 employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my experience was.
Yeah.
And at 5, it was because I was still trying to do all the work day to day. So the other 4 people around me they were not growing,
Right.
right? And they were not teaching me all the things that they were good at, because they
Yep.
were better
Yep.
than me at a ton of things. And I wasn't
Yep.
taking the direction. At 10, you need someone else who's also partly out of the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that all that is going well, or you need someone handling business development, one or the other, or
Right.
both.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I would say as soon as you are comfortable, and certainly by the time you've got 5 or absolutely 10 people, if they are capable, if they are handling their specialties, then, and that sounded terrible. I don't mean capable. I mean, if
Yeah.
they are comfortable handling their specialties on their own,
Yep.
you should get out of it as quickly as possible. And you should not be working directly with the client at that point. Instead, you should be um,
Coaching
checking in
those, coaching those
with the
people.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I go back in my history, a lot of the people that have joined our agency or other agencies I've been at always have looked at it as an opportunity of growth, because it is
Mhm.
more of a fast-paced environment. You're working on a more variety of things. You're exposed to newer technologies,
Yeah.
usually more cutting edge, maybe not necessarily bleeding edge, but you're up there. And so the opportunity as a younger person in their career, or they're young in their career, not necessarily in age, but they're young in their career, it seems very attractive to go to one of these places, because you feel like you're going to learn like in dog years, right? And
Yeah.
that's something I've heard from people saying, well, yeah, this agency looks really cool, but it is about 8 people. And I'm like, yeah, the first thing I'd ask in the interview is, how much is the owner involved in project work,
Yeah. Yeah.
versus how much are they involved in making the team as successful as they can be and supporting them.
Yeah. And I will tell you that until we hit maybe 15 people, I still had to be directly involved on whoever
Oh,
our
sure.
biggest client was, because the
Yep.
biggest client would just demand it. And
Yep.
you
Yep.
can fend that off as much as you can. You can say things like, look, if you do not want me directly involved in
Yeah.
this project. But some clients are just going to insist, particularly if you were part of the pitch. But once we got past that, other people were doing the pitching. And at that
Yep.
point, I was completely out of it.
Well, and to that point, I've experienced it myself too, especially, as you grow from that 10 to 15 to 20, and you do get those larger organizations. I mean, the way you get work is usually through reputation or referral, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you are, as the owner, you are the reputation of the organization at that size. Usually somebody referred them specifically to you.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to pull yourself out of that relationship and say, here you go, Kara will now take care of you.
Yeah.
Um,
And the thing
right.
the thing I would always tell those clients is, I will not be directly involved, but I teach the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I check in, and, they are going, they work the way that they have learned to work. And I am always kind of in the background, teaching them teaching them everything I know. And obviously
Mm-hmm.
they know more than I do about some things, but, I am, because of that, you will get some sense of me, as you're working with the team. unless I
Yeah.
think I did a terrible job of the pitch, in which case I say, you will never have to speak to me again. There's all these other awesome people. And like I said, once I was out of the pitches, seriously, I didn't have to do anything. It was
Right.
the rest of my team was far better at it than I was.
Yeah, these days, now that we're about 40 some people, I'm very clear with the clients up front, like, hey, I don't have anything to do with the work, but I'm here to support you and the team as it's going here. My job is to help facilitate you talking to the smartest people I've been able to hire, which is my goal, because those are the people who are going to give you way more value at this point than I will. So so let's back up just for a second, because one of the other challenges I hear from people in agency world is specialization, and we always keep hearing people talking about the niches are in the riches, or the riches are in the niches. Yeah, that way it goes that way. The riches are in the niches, but it's really scary as an agency owner to watch money just kind of float by, right? To say, oh, well, we're an SEO place, and these people want paid Facebook advertisements, and they're willing to give us a retainer and do all this stuff. What's usually your advice in that respect to, what's your philosophy around positioning and specialization when it comes to an agency?
So we were not in a niche. We ended up being full service digital across everything. What we did try to do is really master one vertical and then move on to the next. So we started with content and copywriting, marketing copywriting, because this is back in 1995, right? There was no SEO at that point.
No.
A couple of years later, we started working on design and development, which we actually got out of later. But then we started on SEO and paid advertising. And at each step, we were just trying to make sure that we were in a place where we could do it. I did that wrong too, because I didn't add services until I felt comfortable doing them myself. And it wasn't until 10 years later when
that's
someone
a challenge.
Say, 10 or so years later, someone come to me and say, you know what, Ian, I've been working on, you hired me for paid search, but analytics is really something I'd like to do more of. And here's what I'm doing now. I think we should start selling this service to our clients. And we would talk, and if it made sense, they would go and do that. In fact, the person who did that started as an intern, went into paid search, started working in analytics, and now runs analytics for the directs analytics for the agency, but also for the larger entity that acquired us. So, it can pay to do that. You just have to really be very careful about how you expand it to new niches.
Well, and see, I love that story you just told, because that's one of the things I've always loved about agency life is that ability to affect people's legacies and careers and things. Because if you have the right attitude of support, you're really, you have no idea that this is a rocket ship that's got a tarp over it over here. And all you need to do is take the tarp off, polish it up a bit, and add some fuel to it. And you'd be surprised at what these people can do.
Yeah. I brag incessantly about,
as you should,
people who either still work at Portent or have worked at Portent are now doing really
well. You should, Ian.
That's my biggest brag most of the time.
That's awesome. I think that's fantastic. I myself have been fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of people's careers over the quarter century I've been doing this, and it's just been so fulfilling to watch their careers and things go. So being a person, because again, it's back to, one of the reasons why people start agencies is because they don't want to have a real job, or they don't want to work for the man. But I think the other impact that people can really focus on is the impact they can have on other people's quality of life as employees in a business. And I think, as to your point, one of the things that I got excited about to get out of the work as quickly as possible was to be able to transition into that role, to be able to focus on being that mentor as quickly as possible. And that was way more fulfilling than working with the clients.
And that was a very hard lesson for me to learn. I sucked at it. Seriously, for the first 10 years I ran Portent, I sucked at it. And it was only when I started to do it more that I actually sort of got out of my own survival mode.
Yeah, right.
And suddenly the agency started to grow. And every time I stepped back into it, the agency stopped growing. Every time I stepped back out of it, it did better. Perfect example, I was terrible at hiring people.
Sure.
I made a couple of really good hires, by luck or whatever. Literally most of the time people who started as interns and moved up from there. And then I let them go do the hiring because some of my hires were so bad that they were legendary, as to how awful they were.
That's
Um,
amazing.
so yeah, so those are the kinds of things where you have to be good at stepping out of it,
Yeah.
and you have to. The other thing I sucked at but got better at is you have to really be capable of creating, and this sounds really cliche and corporate, but you have to be capable of creating a safe enough place that
Yes.
not only can people screw up, but they can come to you and tell you when you have screwed up.
Yes.
If
Yep.
they cannot do that, then you are screwed.
Yeah.
You will not grow as an agency.
Yeah. You won't grow personally and you won't grow as an agency.
Yeah.
And what I've found is that creating that safe space and being that vulnerable leader has actually helped the emotional labor that I have to do so I don't have to put on this face of the president of the company and be stoic and you just kind of,
Yeah.
move throughout the business without, anything seeming to affect me,
Yeah. Everyone else is going to take you way too seriously. Don't make the same mistake.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned about, so we talked about, niching down, but like you talked about removing services over the course. That's had to be a difficult decision. How did you know when the time was to remove a service offering? That's a good piece of advice for someone.
That could sometimes be a struggle because usually it was me saying we should remove the service and the rest of the team didn't want to do it. Particularly the business development team. And the 2 times that we did do it, we actually reintroduced the service about 10 years later. But the times that we got out of it, and it was development and design,
Okay.
it was because we just didn't have the right clients and it was all consuming. It just started to suck up more and more time. And we
Yep.
decided to get out of it because we had enough of that work to do kind of in the background almost, where design and development, we needed them building tools and we needed them working on creative for our content business and doing things like that, to the point where let me back up. The time we decided were times when it was so commoditized that we couldn't come in and charge what I felt we were worth. That's a much simpler way to put it.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, someone came in and they wanted design and development, and we would tell them, and they're like, "Oh, we have someone else who bid $20 an hour to do it."
Right.
And at that point, I just throw up my hands. I'm like, if you don't know the difference, I don't know what to tell you. And big companies that would come to us would say, "Well, you're not a big design shop." So we were caught in between. We were caught in this space where we couldn't capitalize on the fact that we were sort of a smaller, boutique agency, whatever you want to call us. And we couldn't capitalize on the fact that we were really, really good at it.
Because that's where you start to hear clients say things like bench, like things in conversations, and I've been there, kind of exactly to your earlier point, that 15 to 25-ish thing. It's like you're big enough to take on some heavy duty work, but the clients at that level are looking at like the bench, right? How many people are going to be working on my project? Who's their backup? All of that stuff.
And this idea that, that was the other thing, is when people start assuming that more people is better, that's when I start to get worried about a service that we're providing. So, why can't you just give us 5 developers? Wouldn't that be 5 times faster? And I'd be like, actually, it's going to be 5 times slower. So, I mean, if you want complete chaos, here, let me duct tape a couple of cats together and then tie them to a dog, throw them into a room, and you'll see what it's like when you have 5 developers working on your project.
Yep, exactly. It's the 9 women in 1 month making a baby argument.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. So and I've been through it many times, but again, I think it goes out to finding the right clients and setting the right expectations. So tell me about how that process evolved for you, about targeting, finding the right clients for your business. Because early on, you're kind of like, whatever you got, just send it my way, But over time, you start to really get to know what works best for you. How did you go through that process, and then how did you actually start to target those people?
So I started out taking any business I could get. I'd say my personal values started to come into it pretty quickly. We had a few clients at the beginning that, would make me cringe now. and I don't want to get
Sure.
political, so I'm not going to
Yeah.
start talking about who they are.
Yeah, I get
Um,
you.
but that was something I figured out pretty quickly. Then it was, was there some kind of rapport between me and them when we were still small and it was going to be me doing the work? If I walked out of a sales pitch where we were all kind of like, yeah, then I probably wouldn't do it. Um, and then most important, you know, Portent had a real sort of, and I think still has, they're still around, I should say that, has a real sort of teaching oriented culture. If the potential client that I was talking to valued that, then I knew right away that that was a good potential client. Now, when my
Hmm.
business development team was out selling, they had a different set of criteria that worked just as well for our team. But for me personally, that was kind of how I assessed clients.
So one thing I found, and you can tell me about your place, but most marketing agencies are really bad at marketing themselves.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is it that you're so good working with, and I've seen this over and over again with agencies, is that they're really good at getting the essence of what the client needs and transitioning it into
Mhm.
these things. But then when they all sit in a room and have to point the finger, hold up the mirror, it's a disaster. What did you run into that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is you're just too busy.
Yeah.
You're just way too busy. The other one
Yep.
is it's very hard to look at your own business and ask the hard questions, right? I would always laugh because we'd be working on our marketing and our clients would always come to us and say, no, we're good at everything. We want to rank
Hmm.
for every word. And I'd be looking and I would start by saying, no, you know what? We're very specific at these four things. And then I think, yeah, but we also get business here. So could we add that in? And I would just keep doing it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
the, I am definitely kind of weird as an agency owner, though I was, because I'm a total introvert,
Mm,
huge introvert.
sure.
Um, so, going out and giving big pitches was not something I like to do. Most of the
Yeah.
marketing that I did was speaking at conferences and teaching like crazy.
Hmm.
Um, so our marketing plan was kind of different. Um, I also think it's very hard to do marketing for professional services firms,
It is. Yes.
and agencies are included.
Yep.
And that's the other reason I think it's so difficult. So you really end up marketing the people, and marketing the
Yep.
portfolio and the work
Yep.
you've done. And that's why it can be very hard to go out and do sort of these bigger campaigns. And we marketed the people by doing lots of content and getting them writing and speaking as well. We
Hmm.
marketed the people by literally just saying, look at this person, how awesome are they?
Yep.
And we talk about the clients we worked with. But most of our business was referral based.
Yep.
And I think with any professional services you can put up the huge billboard and hope people call you. But we are not in a transactional business,
Right.
right? If we're getting transactional clients, that's a problem. So,
Yep.
and that's why the marketing is so difficult.
Right. Yeah. As you know, again, yeah, you get some interesting things, but that's where reputation, the building of your
Yeah.
reputation, the reputation will start to precede you, and then you stop getting those people that are looking for $5,000 websites and stuff
Well,
showing up.
yeah. And when you start, of course, it's a cart and horse thing because you have
Yeah.
to, or chicken and egg thing because you don't have the reputation yet. And that's
Right.
where, honestly, at the beginning, you're scrambling for everything. You know
Yep.
what? I
Yep.
went to little chambers of commerce meetings around Seattle and told people what
Yep.
I did. And, and I hated it and I was terrible at it, but I got my first few clients. And,
Yep.
every 5 or 10 clients at one particular size, we would get one of the next size. And you just kind of keep laddering your way up that way.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think again, it's about making sure that you never just settle for things, because the minute you start to
Yeah.
coast, that's when things go really bad. I've seen at places where not only are you maybe not adding services, but to your point, you're not deprecating things that you're not good at anymore, or
Yeah.
don't make money anymore, or
And you're not improving and learning.
right.
The another big mistake I'll see agencies make as they're kind of, and again, we did it early on, is they sort of develop a startup culture. And yes, I mean that in
Right.
all the worst possible ways. And that also makes it hard to market yourself
Yep.
because in startup culture, you just expect that people are going to suddenly show up, think you're awesome, and start throwing money at you. And yes, I'm sorry. I know that sounds terrible and judgmental, but most of the startups that I've been connected with, I have some awesome ones as clients that have gotten
Mhm.
past that phase,
Yeah.
but I have also been involved in lots of small startups that are complete
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
poop
nightmare.
shows. I
Yeah.
don't want to
It's a
swear on your
nightmare. No, you're
podcast,
fine.
but yeah, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. And again, you know, that's where I've got a friend who calls it sending people to the Upwork casino, where,
Exactly. That's great. I'm stealing that.
yeah. And, you know, but that's again, I would say that a lot of our clients that come through specifically have been through this before. Like this isn't their first time going through a custom software design and development build with our place. We're the place you usually show up after you learn how hard and expensive and difficult it is.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but we did a lot of work with clients dealing with, SEO PTSD,
Yeah.
and just,
Yep.
really bad experiences with agencies in
Yeah.
paid search and social and general marketing and whatever. And yeah, usually we were not the first place people came.
Yeah.
We were usually the second or third.
Which is good because you can differentiate yourself right away. But it's also you have to rebuild a lot of trust with the service as a whole, which I find really hard to do because something, for example, something like SEO, that's not something I can throw $6,000 in a month at. It's going to take months and months and months, and then months and months more to even start to show results, right? So if I'm paying you all this money every month and I'm not seeing the needle move, it's a lot. I got to trust you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I liked that part of it and I still do, because there's something, I'm not sure why, but maybe it's the teacher side, but I like sort of pointing out, okay, this is what happened before. This is how we're going to do it. This is exactly, no black box, nothing hidden. This is exactly what we're going to do and why. Can you trust us to do that? And that was generally my pitch. And as we were working with a client, that was generally what worked best. And usually if someone really liked us, they would say that. If they didn't like us, they'd say, yeah, we worked with Portent for 3 months and we didn't immediately rank number one, and we didn't see our profits from paid search immediately quintuple or whatever.
I'm going to the Better Business Bureau and complaining.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So, I think the last question I've got is, so you also sold your business, sort of. I'm guessing either that was a very easy decision or a very difficult decision. So, tell me a little bit about how that process went for you, because I think it is something that agency owners think about when they're running their agency or starting it. Is like, what is kind of my exit strategy? Is this going to end up being a lifestyle business? Am I going to sell this? Is this just something I'm going to hand off to the employees? There's all these sorts of fantasies you create in your mind. Tell me about that thought process that went through for you.
So the first thing I would say is all businesses are lifestyle businesses. It's just whether the lifestyle sucks or not. Given whatever you want to do, right? If you want to work 100 hours a week, then maybe your lifestyle business where you're working 100 hours a week is great, but whatever. I did not come into it with a plan to sell my company. I never had a plan to sell Portent. I actually did once. We were acquired and I acquired us back. And this was in like 2000, 2001.
Oh, interesting.
It was a brutal experience. Yeah. And after that, had sort of said to myself, it's not going to happen.
It's coming to the grave with me.
Well, it was more just, eventually someone else in the agency will take it over.
Yeah.
They will buy me out over time and that's how it'll work. Or it's coming to the grave with me, whatever. But I had no exit strategy. And I would say in the agency world, having an exit strategy is hard because it's hard to reconcile that with the kind of long-term thinking you have to have about how you work with clients and how you build your team. A lot of the time the team starts at an agency because of you, particularly when you're smaller. So if they hear that your plan is to sell and leave them, that's not
scary.
I decided to sell when someone showed up who I actually already knew, and they were not another agency, and they were paying cash. What I would say is, and there are certainly deals where you get equity in each other that can be great, but for me, I knew I was giving up some responsibility, good and bad, and I didn't want to be in a position where someone else could sort of affect us.
Yeah.
The other
Right.
thing, the reason I sold is because they were going to leave us alone.
Mm.
We were still portent. There were still some challenges.
Oh, of course.
I still left after 2 years. A lot of that was because I had been a CEO for 25 years and I needed to try something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's part of the decision. The other part of the decision I would say is important, and this is something where I failed. You need to have a very clear description of the job you want after you sell. Assuming you stick around, you need to be very clear what you're going to do in that new entity, whatever that new entity is.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think, again, one thing I would give as advice to agency owners is go out and find the Ians of the world who have done this and ask them for their opinion. Like, get some experience from other people, I think, or get some of the stories from other people of what they went through and things to look out for. Because if you've never sold a business before, it doesn't matter if it's a lemonade stand or a multi-million-dollar agency. It's there's a lot of things that you will never predict. So,
and we can't tell you the right way to do it. What we can tell you is what worked for us or didn't.
Yep.
And then you can take feedback from us. I will also tell you that as your agency gets bigger, you need to find professional coaches.
Yes.
A lot of people roll their eyes at the idea, but you need to find professional coaches. I had 2 over the course of Portent's life before I sold, and they at each, the first one sort of revolutionized how I worked, and then the second one revolutionized how the agency worked. And in both of those cases, they were critical. So you need to find experts and depend on them, just like people are hiring you to do things.
Yep. No, I think that's very sound advice, Ian, and I appreciate your time today. So tell me if I want to connect with you, Ian, and if I want to learn more about the work you're doing these days. And you're doing a lot of speaking events, so I'm guessing you're available to come and talk to my team or my conference or things. Where can I find you and learn more about it?
So I'm just ramping up speaking again post-pandemic. So
great.
If you want me to come speak, let me know. Best way to reach me is probably on Twitter. It's just Ian Lurie, IANLURIE. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can always email me at ian@ianlurie.com.
That's great. Thanks so much, Ian. I'm so glad we got connected and that you were able to come on the show. I truly appreciate it. And we'll have you back on again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me and Ian for that amazing conversation. I learned so much from Ian, and I hope you did too. While you're at it, check out our hiring page. Did I mention that at the beginning? I don't think I did. I might need to do the whole spiel again if you want, but no, that's fine. I'll skip it. Check it out, foundrymakes.com. We're hiring lots of different positions. Love to see you over there. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I appreciate you, and we will see you sometime, probably next week. All right. Have a good one.